Ladies and gentlemen, Rainer Stern.
Thank you, Adam, and welcome to Sales Leadership in the Digital Future. As Adam said yesterday, Rainer will bring his crystal ball. Well, I brought some images, I brought some pictures in order to tell you a story and give you lots of examples. So my name is Rainer Stern, and I'm very privileged and honored to be here with you today. In fact, it's the first time I'm in such a great, immersive, exciting technology virtual experience. Isn't it exciting how technology can connect us, how technology can bring us together, how technology can help us in sales? Well, at the same time, many of us have the feeling of being overwhelmed by the speed of change. And there's not only technology change. Yesterday, we talked about the COVID-19, the pandemic. That's certainly an accelerator of the already existing speed of change. Now, the pandemic will be over sometime. The technology speed of change will stay for the future. And for you as a leader, the really important question is, what does this mean for sales leadership? And this is exactly what I'm going to cover today. It's always about three things. First, what is this technology-driven digital future? Second, what does it mean for sales leadership? And third, how do we put all of this together so that it's meaningful and relevant for you, the seller, and the buyer? To drive leadership so that the seller can be the leader your customer deserves and needs. So let's move to the first question. What is digital transformation all about? And I remember Scott, a colleague of mine who is dealing with the platinum accounts, the largest accounts at SAP. We were looking at digital transformation, and he was always talking about, Rainer, you need to act more digital, you need to think more digital, you need to embrace digital. While I had no idea what he was talking about, I thought, let's dig a little bit deeper. And my research brought me, fun fact, 300 years back in time. Gottfried Wilhelm Leibniz wrote an article in the year 1703 where he introduced a system of ones and zeros to explain the world. Well, we're using the same binary system as the code that is underlying computer technology up until today and in the future. And there have been many inventions on the way since then, many inventions that disrupted markets. But there's one thing, you know, Steve Jobs, in 2007, when he announced the iPhone, he didn't announce an invention. He just announced the go-to-market, the availability of the iPhone. Now, this was a true game changer. It brought business to millions of consumers. It brought a new experience to sellers and buyers, and it also changed the buying behaviors of customers in the B2C, in the B2B space. So the question is, what will the end user of the future look like? Will we be replaced by technology? Technologies obviously are creating disruption in markets all around the globe every single day. Quantum computing fuels big data. The Internet of Things fuels artificial intelligence. Deep learning fuels robotics. It's like a tornado approaching us and you don't know when the next one's coming. It is the total chaos. And today we're talking about the VUCA world. VUCA being the abbreviation for volatility, uncertainty, complexity, ambiguity, the total chaos. Now, according to McKinsey, those companies succeed that teach their employees to embrace this new change and to embrace the future. Human interaction remains the key component. It remains the key component for change in business today and in the future. Now, that brings us to the second question. What does human interaction mean for leadership in sales? Imagine you're about to jump out of a plane. Hopefully it's high enough, and hopefully someone packed your parachute very carefully. But as Rick Page says, hope is not a strategy. If you're jumping out of a plane, you also have to trust others. As a leader in sales, others have to trust you. They need to follow you. A lot has been written about leadership. Trust me on that one. Agile leadership, conscious leadership, transformational leadership, humble leadership. But there's one thing that is core to all of these theories and methodologies, and that is trust. Trust is the new currency. How can you build trust? Look at a typical situation today. It's like a new competitor is entering the market. a startup company is disrupting the market. You have to sell in a new territory. You need to go from a state of the known to a state of the unknown. You have to overcome risk, and there's uncertainty underlying beneath it. Uncertainty, the killer of the VUCA world. So the question is, how do we move from the state of the known to the state of the unknown? Imagine this for a moment. If you are in this situation and you're able to remove the thing in the middle, the risk, you remove risk and replace it by trust, then you can overcome this gap. You can bridge the gap. And this is called a trust leap. A trust leap occurs when we take a risk to do something different or new from anything we've ever done before. It could be jumping out of a plane. It could be getting into a self-driving car for the first time. It could be being in a customer escalation. You don't know what's going to happen. What we are asked to do today as leaders, and what technology is enabling us to do, is to leap faster and higher than ever before. Now, what behaviors lead to trust? I looked into this and I did some research on this, and we all know it. You need to be authentic as a leader. You have to show empathy. Transparency is very important. You need to be open, honest. That increases predictability, your behavior. It also reduces uncertainty. Very important. The human side of things. We had a question yesterday. Where's the human side in sales and in leadership? This needs to be answered. This needs to be addressed. It is about providing psychological safety, a safe zone where you provide people to say and do anything they want without them fearing any consequences. And then values. That's a good one. Have you ever spoken to your team members or your customers about their values? Do you know your values? It's a really interesting conversation. A little bit awkward in the beginning, but trust me, it's a good one, and it will bring you together. It builds trust. Now, the last one here, extending trust in advance. That's an interesting one. A digital native once approached me and said, Rainer, from you as a leader, I expect you to extend trust in a blind way. Because I'm a digital native. I know how to use technologies, tools, and all this fancy stuff, all the apps. I know how to solve any problem. While I really respect that level of confidence, I thought, maybe it's a good moment to actually demonstrate my trust leap. It's a good point. So now we focus on trust. And the question is, what are examples for you in your sales reality moving forward that help you build trust, deal with the changes ahead, and be prepared for the future? I will show you 3 areas which I've identified in my own research over the last 3 years in dealing with CEOs, startup companies, digital natives, leaders within SAP and outside of SAP. The first one, disruption is the new normal. There are more startup organizations than ever before. They are disrupting the market. If they're successful, they can grow exponentially. Just look at crowdfunding platforms like Fundraiser, Kickstarter. It's amazing how they move into niches and swamp the market in a different way. They're disrupting the market. Are you a disruptor, or are you helping others to disrupt, or are you being disrupted? So one of the most important elements in order to be innovative and disruptive is to have a growth mindset. Employees in a growth mindset company are 65% likelier to say that the company supports risk-taking, employees are more trustworthy, and the company as such is more innovative. The growth mindset requires all of us as leaders to learn and reinvent our own behaviors. True leaders need to learn and accept different points of view. Easier said than done. The leader of the future needs to be a role model. Of course, we need to walk the talk. We need to lead by example. And a real leader encourages creativity. Try this the next time someone, a team member, approaches you asking you for advice. Can you help me? What's the solution? Give me the answer. Just don't let your inner advice monster come out and get you. Turn the question around and ask the other person, all right, what are the options that you see as an expert on this? What is your recommendation? How would you decide? Tell me, I can make the decision, but I'm not doing all the brain work behind it for you. Encourage and enable the other person. And of course, it's always about my favorite topic, and that is communication. Several leaders I have spoken to always said the same thing. Rainer, first, it's important to set your vision and mission, and then you connect with your people. While the first piece sounds like a sales management textbook, you have to set your vision, mission, operating principles, KPIs, goals, all this stuff. Yeah, the second part obviously is more important, because the question is, whatever you do in the first, how do you connect with your team? How do you bring them behind you as the leader? How do you bring them behind the goals? How do you bring them behind the journey ahead? So it's all about becoming the connector of people. Create awareness, then explain your intention, give attention to the person, give attention to the detail, and do the reflection together with your team, and also include the feedback. That's very important. More important than that is to make your team aware how what they do impacts the customer benefit. If you do that, you will bring them behind you and trust you. The other fact of communication is completely underestimated, and that is communication in a social way as a human being. And I'm not talking about gossip, small talk, the latest romance, what's happening in the monarchy. I'm talking about psychological safety, the safe zone. It involves empathy and trust in advance, and it obviously takes some time to get to the level where you can ask people, how are you doing? I really want to know, how are you doing? How are you doing? I'm really genuinely interested, not in the small talk, how are you? Another aspect of communication is you need to appreciate other people. Of course, appreciation, everybody wants to be appreciated. Digital natives tell me, Rainer, for every please, I want to hear a thanks. So why don't appreciate them for what they're doing? But it's also, and that's the second aspect, how they're doing it. They may do things differently. So appreciate that others are doing things differently. Because if you don't do it, you will soon be lonely. And employee turnover, as we all know, is very costly. So the question is, how do you encourage your team for the future? I remember one of my first longer vacation trips to New Zealand. I took a map and I wanted to go to the city center of Auckland to discover the city from there. But I could never make it to the city center. I just couldn't find my way until a local approached me, looked at the map, had a big smile on his face, and I'll never forget the moment when he took the map out of my hands, turned it upside down, handed it back to me and said, now you will find your way. What I had completely forgotten was that in the southern hemisphere, the sun is in the north, not in the south. I was holding the map like I'm used to. I did not change the frame of reference, and changing the frame of reference is really important when you want to build trust for others. So this obviously was a lesson learned forever. So failing doesn't mean you're not successful. Failing actually means that you succeed eventually. You learn from it. And the more often you fail, the more you learn. But the more often you succeed, the higher level of confidence you will have. That builds trust in your own capabilities and the leader who is encouraging you to fail often and early. Now, another aspect of that is to be open for craziness and think differently. Are you the old school mentality type person who thinks old school, or are you really crazy sometimes and turn things upside down, like the leader, the CEO of a startup company who says, Rainer, look at the org chart. I'm at the bottom, my team is at the top, because my team is more important, and I demonstrate this by putting them literally on top. So just think differently sometimes and change the frame of reference. Turn things upside down. I mentioned it before, it's very important, the aspect of emotional intelligence, the human factor, the empathy, the emotional intelligence to talk about with your team about unity and to demonstrate enthusiasm for the team. Encourage them to take decisions on your behalf. Or if you want to move even further, to show your own vulnerability by showing and by saying, I made a mistake, but I learned from it. And next time I will succeed even faster. Obviously, that takes a lot of trust into the other people. It also takes some time to establish. but it is something where you earn and you create an enormous amount of trust. You need to have the safe zone also for yourself as a leader. So we talked about digital transformation, how trust is important and behaviors that lead to trust. And I gave you some examples. So how do we move forward? How do we bring all of this together? At SAP, we built a program for sales managers from all around the world, first-line sales managers. And we ran an academy in California, and it was a 2-week program. We condensed it to a 1-week program, optimized it over 6 years. And then the pandemic hit us in March. The good thing was nobody was arguing that there's no travel possible. The other side of the coin was, hey, we have to do something. In April, we launched our first virtual program for first-line sales managers, and it covered 4 areas. And it covered those areas that sales managers told us are most important. First, how do you plant the seed? Then, how do you walk together the way with your customer to joint success? Third, how do you work together with a team? What do you have to change? And then fourth, how do you prepare yourself to harvest the results of your success of what you have been doing? So we ran this in a virtual environment, obviously, and we ran those 4 sessions. And in the meantime, we have covered more than 600 sales leaders from all around the globe. And interesting, they're coming back. They really want to see how the story continues. So first, we start with you as the leader. What's your state of mind right now in the pandemic, in this chaos and the tornado of technology change? State of mind is very important. How are you speaking to the state of mind of others? How do you respond to others? The customer, very similar situation. Put the customer first and identify what is the mood of the customer. A mood is a collection of state of minds. The right conversation in the wrong mood is the wrong conversation. Now, how do you connect to inner circles? What earns you the right to become part of the inner circle, to be heard by executives? What earns you the right so that you can act as a trusted advisor on an ongoing basis? So we did a lot of exercises around not only executive conversation, but also how to prepare the storylines for executives. Team focus. How do we work differently in the team? And we used a model invented by Robert Johansson from the Institute of the Future in California. And it's called VUCA Prime. So it takes the VUCA world model and it says prime, meaning I turn it into something positive. So I'm moving from ambiguity, from vision, VUCA, V, vision, from volatility to vision. I work from uncertainty to understanding. I walk from complexity towards clarity. How can I move from ambiguity to adaptability? How do I turn every perceived disadvantage into a perceived advantage? And how do I focus on the lead indicators so that I get the right results that I want? And then last but not least, we put everything together in terms of sales management. Obviously, you have to do forecasting, pipeline, deal reviews. I mean, that's the sales management one-on-one. We use a franchise type system. So we organize our sales organization, our sales tools, methodologies, processes. We run them similar across the world. How do I focus on my team member in one-on-ones? And what is my way of helping them for personal growth and for personal development? Last but not least, how do I lead myself and how do I manage up? A question that's very often forgotten, but how do I manage upwards to the organization? Most importantly, we are not running these sessions because we love running sessions. We do them because we are looking at the experience of the learner, and we also measure the experience of the learner. We also measure real sales and operations KPIs like opportunities, pipeline, win rate, revenue. But the most important thing we do for our flagship programs is to isolate the effect of training to generate additional revenue. Since we can show that number, the question is no longer why should we invest time on training? The question is when can I receive the training? Because if I don't get it, I miss out on this opportunity. So moving forward as leaders, we have to focus that's something that technology cannot deliver. The human factors, And I showed them earlier, and I selected 4 of them. Be transparent to the other person, be a role model and lead by example, be a social leader, act as a social human being like everybody else and how you would like to be treated with. And think differently, turn things upside down, just change your frame of reference every once in a while. But the most important thing, it is not complete without you. You are vital to establish trust. If you set trust as the foundation of your leadership, if you use something like VUCA Prime to your advantage, then you can build a success for your team and for the future. Now, this is a significant moment in leadership. There's no doubt about that. There's magic in connecting people from the boardroom to the shop floor. There is magic in making people love the work that they do. That is what leadership is all about. And you can do it as well. Thank you very much. And back to you, Adam.
Thank you very much indeed, Rainer. Much appreciated, sir. Lots and lots of really good stuff in there. I mean, typically in these things, my job is to act slightly as a devil's avocado. So, you know, if you talk about the human stuff, I tend to want to look at the technology. If you talk about technology, I tend to want to look at the human stuff. I'm curious, right at the sort of start, you talked about the trust leap and removing risk and how trust in people is really important in that. What role does data, and by data in this sense, I think I probably mean evidence, what role does data or evidentiary kind of, you know, progress play in that trust outside of just the human factors of somebody being relatable and somebody being authentic?
That's a very good point. And actually, I told GDS in the beginning, I will not make any attempt to try to position and sell any SAP solution here. Obviously, we are dealing a lot with data and analytics and these kind of applications. Now, in the sales leadership environment, it is very important to use data in the sense that you need to use data to gather insights that you can use for your sales environment, for your salespeople. I'm not talking only about anecdotal evidence. I'm really talking about trends. I'm talking about what is really happening, what is changing in the market. And one example for this is when we ran this program, we ran this every single week, and we had multiple cohorts running simultaneously. We could see trends throughout the pandemic, throughout every month, how things are changing in sales and how the behavior of sales leaders, how the mood in the sales team and also on the customer side is changing. So we took these insights from the field, from our first line sales managers, aggregated it and fed it back to the next cohort, but we also fed it back to the organization. So getting as many data points as possible and turning them into insights that you can use that are relevant for you, I think that's the key.
Of course. Thank you very much, Steve. Ryan, I've got loads more questions for you, but as you know with this, it's not about my questions. It is, of course, about you and yours, and I think we have our first audience question. The rest of you, thinking caps on, raise your virtual hands. Who do we have up first? Jochen. Hello, sir. How are you? Jochen, are you on mute, sir?
Yes. Hello. Good morning.
There we go. Good morning. What is your question for Rainer?
Yes, thank you very much, actually, Rainer, for this very inspiring talk and how you kind of deal with a management challenge in sales. One question is, as the whole world turned into digital and we can't meet customers anymore on site, did you do some specific training to help people to show empathy and their human side in a purely digital world?
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Jochen. This was the key question. When I stayed at home since Friday the 13th in March. I'm staying at my home office, and I had exactly the same question as all of the salespeople and all of the sales leaders, how to deal with salespeople. And that is, first of all, we need to do our homework in terms of being technically able to connect with customers. All right. At SAP, we are in a very lucky situation that we had all the equipment, we had all the bandwidth, we had everything technology-wise in order to connect with customers. But then how to connect in a virtual environment, that was absolutely brand new to everybody, brand new to me. I didn't mention it, but I'm 25 years old at SAP. So 25 years, I'm going to the office every day. I never used this virtual environment. In fact, all the training I ran in my life was face-to-face. When I was responsible for Siemens as a customer, it was face-to-face. So I could not possibly imagine how to do this in a virtual environment. So what we did in the very beginning was offer many courses on how to use the tools so people get confident on the technology side. Secondly, how to introduce yourself in this new environment, show empathy, and do it really slowly and get the other person on board to really start after some time to really connect and bond with you. And then don't start immediately with your sales pitch. It's really important, this social aspect, to really connect. How do you feel right now? Do you also have kids at home? I mean, all of a sudden, it's very natural that the door opens and, you know, the kids come in or something else unexpected happens. I've never seen as many cats and dogs in meetings as over the last 6 months. So very important to really make it, to show appreciation and to say, all right, this is the situation we are in, but I want to help you. And you need to establish this trust. And we had many conversations, and also the whole leadership inside the organization from top to bottom made a huge effort in making, in showing this is the new reality and helping people to understand and to apply this. This was not easy for everybody. And we are still, this is still work in progress, but we are advancing as we go. But it was very important to say, hey, everything is fine. Just do your best. And so far, we've done a good job.
Thank you very much indeed, Rainer. Jochen, I hope that was useful for you, sir.
Yes, thank you. Absolutely. Thanks, Rainer.
Thank you very much indeed. Have a great rest of the day, great rest of the summit. Thank you very much indeed. Up next, we have John. John, good morning, sir. How are you?
I'm very well, thanks, Adam, and thanks for the opportunity to ask a question to Rainer. Rainer, again, thanks for a very valuable insight into some of the techniques you use. One of the things I'd like to ask, Rainer, in your experience, is when I'm talking to customers or even my own sales team, I've discovered quickly that not all of them have lived through momentous change or disruption economically in the industry. So if I think back to the year 2000 and the dot-com crash, the financial crash of 2008, and now we've got this new scenario in 2020. Can you share, have you had different experiences from different generations in the workforce of how they're reacting to this new situation? And do you have to taper your training and your sort of coaching for the different generations?
Thank you, John. It's a great question.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So maybe three examples. So one is the more experienced generation, where they have never used these virtual tools. Of course, there we need to focus on, okay, I show you how easy it can be, and I show you the first 3 steps that enable you to do something, to communicate and to connect with your customers. And again, to show empathy that it's not easy in the beginning, but I can show you and train you, and you need to spend a lot of time. The second example is how should I say this? The generation in between, employees in their 40s. And there it was, all right, we have to realize this is a new situation. How can we deal with them? How can we deal with this situation? How can we move forward? So it was a discussion, I would say, more or less on eye level, that this is a serious situation, like we have seen some, and we will move out of this. So it's a matter of how do we help them from on a technology side, but also to help them, hey, you have a private life, so don't let this go down the drain because you have to stay at home and you have to make many compromises with families and children. And then the third is the digital natives, the young people, where you really have to take them by the hand and say, all right, let's sit down and let's talk about the situation right now. Let's really, I want to know from you how you feel. Talk about feelings and why, what's behind it. And what sounds like a little bit psychology in the kitchen, to really demonstrate understanding and empathy and give them time and space on an ongoing basis to really eventually take them by the hand and say, we will get through this together. And the experience is that without telling anyone in my team, the more experienced took the youngers by their hands and said, I will help you, I will guide you through this, I'm your mentor in this. So there was a great team spirit to help others.
Thank you very much indeed.
Good.
John, is it the same with you? I'm just curious because this is quite an interesting point. Is it the same with you that, you know, the older generation to which, you know, let's be honest, we probably all belong, don't particularly have a grasp on the technology? The younger generation do, but the younger generation culturally just don't have the, you know, the ability to fall back on lived experience.
Yeah, I think Rainer has absolutely nailed it. It really is that sort of tree. And this is very unusual because we have in some places 4 generations in the workforce, you know, and that's a very different path to navigate. What I discovered with the digital natives, Rainer, is very interesting. So I've got an international inside sales team based here in Ireland serving worldwide outbound sales. We've people from Poland, from Italy, from different parts of Europe. And they're the ones that are actually gasping to get back into the office because they're in shared accommodation. They may not have family here in Ireland, so they're missing the social element of business. So that generation, surprisingly, has been the biggest challenge because they really like social business, you know. So we're doing exactly what you say. We're spending more time, and you know, my middle manager spending much more time with them. So it's very important that we look out for that younger generation to show them how to get through these really challenging times.
Thank you very much indeed, John. Much appreciated, sir. Thank you for your contribution. Have a great
You're
rest of the day.
welcome.
Great rest of the summit. Now I think we have Lou Becker from SIP Telecom. Hey, Lou, how are you? You're mute. There we go.
Hi, thank you very much for the opportunity. Like, I am working for SIP Telecom CPC, like, which is a Hong Kong-based company. And one of my questions for Rainer is like, because he said like, you know, that there is also it's very important to bring all these needs for the training and educating the team to the upper management. And this is, I think, exactly what we are having in our company as a problem, how to bring it up, because working for a Hong Kong-based company, like we're actually, well, okay, like based in China as well, where everything started, there is a tendency to behave like, well, nothing happened and everything business is as usual. And it's very difficult and challenging to address the issue, especially in Europe, of people working from home, all the challenges that we are facing. So my question is how to bring the proper messages. Does he have any experience how to bring the proper message to the upper management to accept the change?
Do you know, that's a great question. It's shared also by people in America. I spoke to somebody in America who was in Florida versus somebody who was in Texas. Florida had gone into lockdown. Texas hadn't. The CEO was based in Texas, and he was like, we're open. And all the workforce was based in Florida, and they're like, no, we're not. Rainer, what's the advice there?
Okay, very good point, actually, and thank you for the question. There is no one size fits all, that's for sure. And we have experienced that it's not so much about the market in China or the market in one particular country, because the companies we're dealing with are typical international global companies, and they still have these issues, problems, even though some regions and some countries may be in a more progressed environment and others are a little bit behind. Some are more hit by the pandemic, others less. So it's really about the situation of the customers, especially in China. We had to set up a program to educate them. Hey, although you think there's no problem, this is what your customers out there in the world are thinking. And this is the situation out there. So be aware of that so that you can communicate with them in the right way, on the right level. And my second piece to the answer is we need to work very closely with the local market or the market units and the regions so that we can make and adapt and adjust our message much more so that it becomes even more relevant to them. So we ran this program in special versions in China, I mean, virtually for China, for South Korea, for Japan, and for France and for other countries so that we are more relevant. And this only works if you're working with the locals, if you have the understanding and if you adapt and adjust accordingly. But again, there's no one size fits all. And of course, I'm talking about global programs here, but at the end of the day, you really have to make it relevant for the sales.
Thank you very much indeed. Lou, I hope that was useful.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Lovely. Thank you for your contribution. Thank you very much. Have a great rest of the day, great rest of the summit. Thank you. Rainer, look, thank you so much for getting us started today. Just before you go, I want to ask you one question, if you don't mind. It's been sort of burning away at me for a bit. I once spoke to a chap retired now, but he was the CEO of a very large pharmaceutical company. And at the time, he led one of the biggest ever mergers between two sizable pharmaceutical companies to form this sort of megalith. And I talked about what the hardest thing was in that transformation. Now, this wasn't a digital transformation. This is pre-digital transformation times. But it was still a lot of moving parts coming in and different cultures and all that sort of thing. And he said, I'll tell you honestly, the hardest part is not the people that say yes to you and get it and go away. The hardest part is not the people that say no to you, that you can talk to and try and write. The hardest part is what he called the passive resistors, the people who say yes to your face and then go away and do nothing. Is this sort of transformation, does it help weed those people out? Does it become easier to deal with those, or are they still the most problematic area?
Very good and complex question, actually. And let me try to answer it in a way that eventually it's not so much what we believe is, if we believe in the technology or not. It is really the reality on the customer side. And if they show you what they're doing with technology, if they show you what they are about to do with their business models where they need technology, you have to get in there. You have to educate yourself. You have to believe in it. Otherwise, you will eventually resign internally in your body and then also in the company. You cannot walk all the way with your customer. So it's not a question of do I sort of follow but don't believe in it? If you don't believe in it, you will drop out eventually. You need to face reality, and reality is that the companies we are working with, they are leapfrogging like we haven't seen it. They surprise us every single day. So the innovation is here to stay. The speed will increase, and we need the people to go the way. And you will be surprised how many experienced older colleagues are moving forward and are creative and innovative. Of course, we need to embrace the younger generation moving into this. But yes, there are, especially in sales, there are lots of people who are not made for this kind of change, and they don't have this growth mindset to move forward. That's the reality.
Rainer, I really, really appreciate it. It'd be lovely to have you back on at some point. I'd really like to hear more about, actually, I know SAP do great work with people on the autistic spectrum out in your place in California, and I believe that's had some amazing results as well. Rainer, thank you so much for getting us started today. Have a great rest of the day, great rest of the summit. Thank you, Rainer.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Take
you,
care.